Askreddit asks, what's the creepiest place you've been?
One year I worked in a haunted house that was inside a building that used to be a funeral home. The morgue was downstairs and still had the drawers. My job was to lay in the drawer and pop out when people walk by. Laying in a cramped drawer. In the dark. On cold metal. With flashes of lights and screams in the distance was probably the creepiest place. I scared so many people. Including a middle school-aged kid who straight up pooped his pants and a drunk college chick who peed. So it was kind of worth it.
You're probably in some people's creepy stories.
That's a straight up no from me, dawg. An abandoned mental institution in NJ. My friend brought us there and we wandered the grounds and went in a few buildings, including the morgue. The officers still had patient files and the pediatric area still had kids' artwork. It had been abandoned for about 8 years at that point. It was really creepy and also really sad.
Marlborough, Greystone, Hagedorn. I suppose you're not supposed to look through the files.
Back during Vietnam, my unit got hit hard in the jungle. We split and one group went to help find the VC who attacked us. We stayed behind to evacuate the wounded. The 4 able bodies were supposed to hop on with the injured and go. We load up and one chopper doesn't make it back, so we 4 can't load. We would be grossly overweight. Its late son is low. Pilot says he will drop these guys and come back for us. So we divvy up ammo from the wounded and squat in an open field. 20 minutes goes by, then an hour. 2 hours, it's now pitch black and we're seated in a grassy field. We spent the whole night looking at every stick and leaf. THST twitched. You could feel the tension. We sat in a star back to back with our rifles pointed out. We knew we couldn't repel the attack, but we decided to take as many as we could before being overrun. If overrun, we would pull grenades and do everyone and the VC for 25 feet in every direction. The tension was thick. Sunrise, we heard the Hui come. On the way back he had a hydraulics issue. They worked all night to fix it so we could get flown out ASAP. All 4 dust-offs had issues and took bullets, so that is why the other one didn't return the first time. That field of grass was extremely spooky, even if it was just in our minds.
You must have been wide awake the whole fucking night. I went to a rest stop at 1 a.m. outside Springfield, Illinois a few years back. Went to the restroom and there was blood everywhere. It looked like something got slaughtered. I have never hightailed it out of somewhere so quickly beforehand. Update. So a bit of context. This occurred at a rest stop along HWY 55 outside of Springfield. This was a very old rest stop, not a gas station. It happened in October, maybe November, of 2014. Pretty close to Halloween.
I explored the abandoned Six Flags in New Orleans. It was closed for Katrina and never opened again. While my friends and I were there, we found everything essentially as it was left 4 years prior. Computers in the admin office. Tickets in admission booth. Even jars of fucking pickles in the concession stands.
Everyone thought Katrina would just pass by with only some damage. Sadly it didn't, so no one went and cleaned everything up.
Fun fact: Jurassic World filmed in the parking lot there. They needed a large paved area to film the commercial part of the park and built the set there.
Operating room for brain, URL redacted, STJPBBE. JPG. It's freezing cold. They wheel you up to this stainless steel bed with a cage you put your head in. They tighten down clamps on your head so it can't move. Then knock you out. You wake up multiple times over a 4-5 hour surgery. Semi-conscious. Eyes closed, but you can say, "I hear you guys." Or snap your fingers and hold a finger up like waiter. And the anesthesiologist hits you with a dose. After they're done, they poke a giant needle, ice pick, into different facial muscles to make sure they didn't break anything. Poking it into a muscle causes a subconscious flinching, and they look at the muscle group flinching to make sure each category is still rigged up. I had a bunch of scabs and taped cotton balls across my face and scalp. Then they seal up your skull and sign off on it. They use reciprocating saws and similar power tools to carpenters. It's morbid, terrifying, cold, but it can give you your life back. I spent 2 nights in the hospital and was driving to work 7 days later feeling like $1 million.
I had a friend who cleaned out and sold foreclosed homes for a living. He once took me on a ride to a house he had to photograph for the bank after it had gone into foreclosure. From the moment we got there, it was unsettling. It was in the area of a ski resort, and the neighborhood was wealthy. But once we stepped inside, it was clear that it had been used as a kind of boarding house for resort staff. Numbers outside each of the bedroom doors. Large closets, weird spaces turned into bedrooms. The place was filthy, with black garbage bags everywhere. Pizza boxes, booze bottles, like clearly a party house for staff. But recently abandoned. At one point, I was on the ground floor, and my friend was in the basement, when I suddenly got full body chills. I was standing in the kitchen and there was a bathroom next to it with the door closed. And I somehow knew that there was someone hiding in that bathroom. At the very same instant, my friend called me down to the basement where he had found a back corner which had been converted into another sleeping area. There was a television still on, just showing static, and a kitchen knife on a crate next to the mattress. That was the moment I stepped directly behind my 6 feet 4 inches. 300-pound friend and told him we had to get the fuck out of there. I'm pretty sure the home was being used as an illegal boarding house for undocumented resort workers. And I honestly felt bad for the terrified kid who was still squatting in the basement. But I sure as hell didn't want to find him. Forest Haven, URL redacted, is an abandoned insane asylum in Maryland. It's posted no trespassing and technically patrolled by guards, but in reality is very easy to get into. I was there 2 weeks ago with my SO, exploring and taking photos. There are 22 buildings on the property, all just wide open and abandoned, covered in collapsed ceiling tiles, broken glass, and graffiti. There is still furniture in some of the rooms. And if you delve deep enough into the property, you can still find patient records that were left behind when they closed. We actually found a stack of patient files in a dark, windowless room. It was so surreal, reading about a severely mentally retarded man with a history of schizophrenia, who talks incessantly. This patient had a 1-page handwritten summary for every year that he had been in the hospital. And they all started out the same. Kenny is an almost 45-year-old white male with severe mental retardation and a history of schizophrenia. He has been at Forest Haven for 5 years. Only the age and duration change from page to page. The first one is dated 1973. And the last page in his file is a printed memorial flyer showing he died in September of 1990. The facility was ordered to close in 1974, but didn't actually close its doors until 1991. In its last year of operation, there were 9 deaths at the asylum. Kenny was one of them. The creepiest part? The patient whose file I randomly opened up to. In the middle of a stack of wet, moldering files, sitting on the corner of a collapsing desk in an interior room of an abandoned basement. He shared the same first and middle name as my SO. Just a weird, creepy coincidence in a cold, wet, creepy place. Edit. Here's a handful of the photos I took, URL redacted.
I was on a family vacation to Atlanta. About 1972, we went to visit some cousins of my grandmother's. Twin sisters, never married, in their 80s. The house was in a rundown neighborhood. From the street you'd think it was abandoned. Overgrown yard, part of the roof caved in, boarded up windows. Inside, it was all antiques, and furniture from the 30s and 40s. Slowly deteriorating, and it looked as though they hadn't dusted in years. Wallpaper peeling, old portraits half fallen, looking up to the second floor from the stairs. Just cobwebs and collapsed ceilings. They said they hadn't been up there in years. And definitely rat noises. They both looked and lived like ghosts. And seemed half mad, very civil and proper but off. As an 8-year-old, I was terrified, especially when one of them joked and said, "You should leave him here. He can live with us." I burst into tears, and we left.
My own attic when I was 8. Shut the lights off on your way out and sprint down the steps like the ceiling is collapsing behind you. Whoever says childhood is fun and beautiful is wrong. It's terrifying.
Yeah, fuck all basements and attics and sheds that have a light switch, or pull cord, some distance inside and not right at the door.
Probably a junkie that shot up wrong and blew a vein. Unfortunately pretty common. I worked at a gas station for a while and once walked into our restroom to what looked like a brutal murder scene. Blood on everything, walls, ceiling, doors, literal puddles across the floor. Called the cops and they found the needle in one of the puddles of blood. Edit. There's been some confusion with my phrasing. I did not mean that it is common for users to blow a vein. What is common is for drug users to use gas station or rest stop bathrooms to shoot up in.
Till this happens.
If this was a movie you would have for sure died.
How do we know he hasn't died? No, it's 10:30. I need to go to sleep soon. I don't need that shit in my brain.
Done doing. My old house. About 5 years ago I was living in a town just outside of Washington, D.C. The house was a short 2-story house with a basement that was built in the 50s. The whole house has a weird vibe to it. Not exactly scary, but unsettling. In 2011, the year that we moved in, the guy that built the house stopped by. He told us that he built the house with his dad and 3 brothers in 1952. During the building they found a few skeletons while they were digging out the driveway and of course called the police. Turns out the bodies were Union soldiers from the Civil War who had most likely been killed during the Battle of Bull Run and buried as the Union Army marched back to D.C. Also the basement was unfinished, flooded constantly, and had a spricket infestation.
What's a spricket? Edit. I'm sorry I asked.
Everyone thought Katrina would just pass by with only some damage. Sadly it didn't, so no one went and cleaned everything up.
Everyone thought Katrina would just pass by with only some damage. One of the more stupid decisions in my life. Yeah, I've been through a bunch of hurricanes here before. I'm stocked with beer, water, red beans, rice, etc. There's no reason to leave town. But yeah, that sucked.
You're probably in some people's creepy stories.
I hope so. I actually enjoy scaring people. The next night I got to work the hallway that leads people into the morgue. It was narrow enough to kind of ninja climb up it by putting feet and hands on both walls, and I was able to get pretty parallel to the ceiling. People would walk right below me and I would either yell or drop down behind them. I only did that for half an hour before my arms got tired, and got kicked in the groin. Overall a much better experience than the draw.
Every rustle of grass, every bug flapping its wings got a muzzle pointed at it. No sleep was had by anyone. We didn't even get up to pee, just hung it out and whizzed in the grass.
Christ almighty, this is tense just reading it. This absolutely qualifies.
This is what happens when the Army does transport for the USMC. It was extremely tense and spooky. Knowing you're alone and the fact we only had so much ammo only made it worse. We all had a fragmentation grenade on our laps as our final solution. I wasn't going pow.
Well, I mean, one way or another you were definitely going pow.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to support the channel, and above all, have an excellent day you amazing people.